Howdy, my name is Brenna Jones, and the PAD taught me to justify my choices. No matter what choice that you make when you are making art, you have to necessitate it. You have to have ass behind it.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the PAD podcast. My name is Rob Morgan. I teach design, stage design, set design at Washington University in St. Louis. As I like to say, I'm usually never allowed around audio editing software, but here I am interviewing this week, interviewing Brenna Jones. Brenna Jones is a recent alum from the Performing Arts Department, a recent alum of WashU. She got her degrees in drama, communication design, and creative writing. She is the recently celebrated director of the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee in our lovely Hotchner Studio Theater in the Performing Arts Department. That show was a big success by all accounts, and so Brenna is the talented director behind that show. She's also the artistic director of Half Act Theater Company in her hometown of Hermann, Missouri. We'll talk a little bit about that and her outreach, her embracing young people and giving them, in many cases, their first opportunity at performing on stage and watching them find their voice. So I'm just delighted to talk to Brenna and bring that interview to you all. I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. All right, my first. Here we are, I already screwed up. My guest on the PAD podcast is Brenna Jones, and just for a little context, we are doing this podcast on the set for Spelling Bee, the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which might be the longest musical title in history. And Brenna Jones is the director of Spelling Bee. The show just opened last night to loud acclaim, standing ovation. I'm very excited to have Brenna Jones on the podcast. Welcome, Brenna.
Thank you so much for having me, Rob.
It is fantastic to have you back. There's a vibe. That's a 54-year-old saying a new term, and it sounds probably cringy. But there's a vibe about the show. There's this wonderful vibe that is young people directing young people. It's a story you're telling for young people. Our audience are young people. They are students. And I just want to congratulate you on a very successful opening last night.
Thank you so much. We have had a blast. And there's definitely, I think, the script is the epitome of youth. It is playful, it is childish, but it's also the other things that come along with adolescence. It's really, really big feelings. And so, we played into that a lot. We explored that, and I think that's what makes it successful.
I'm just so proud, I guess. And I know the whole department is. We had a lovely email from acting directing teacher Bill Whitaker today saying just how hopeful it was for this time in history. It's a very hopeful musical for us, and joyous musical for us. I would love to, as we typically do on this podcast, we'll get back around to talking about Spelling Bee, but talk about your bio, your backstory, how you even got involved in theater. You're from Hermann, Missouri, if I'm not mistaken. So if you could talk about that, talk about kind of how your interest even in the art form began.
Yeah, well, my parents and I have known that I was going to be in theater since I was 4. My cousins and I would set up little performances like in the basement, and we would write shows and we would perform, and it was a whole thing. And I always thought that I was going to be an actor. But looking back, I was always the one looking at my cousin and being like, now, Samantha, the jazz hands, they need to be a little bit, they need to be a little more vibrant. And so I got into directing, which has been the joy. It has been the joy for me. When I was acting, I always felt very clouded and very like I have to get it right. I have to do all this work. It was a very heavy endeavor for me. And then when I started directing here and in my professional life outside of school, it's like the clouds parted, and I was mentally so clear, and I was able to work with joy instead of with this like tension, and that was a beautiful thing. And from there, I'm like, well, I guess I'm directing for the rest of my life. That's what I'm doing.
That's fantastic. I'm glad that you shared that. So, how did you, with that background, and coming from your, from this state, from the state of Missouri, how did WashU even land on your radar? What were your interests outside of drama? Maybe that's what drew you to WashU, but you were highly involved, as we all know, in the department when you were here. So, can you talk a little bit about how WashU landed just in your future?
My mother is a strong-willed woman. She has wanted me to go to WashU since I was little, and she never said that out loud, but she would sort of push me in a direction to go to, she's like, well, let's go look at this thing. Or she would take me to the Nutcracker every winter and be like, wow, look at how nice this theater is. And so when I got into high school, I found out that my high school had an arts program because I did a lot of fine arts as well. And they had this scholarship to WashU. That was a pretty significant scholarship, and so I applied for that, and then I got it for the Sam Fox School of Art and Design, or Design and Visual Arts. Wow, it's like I didn't even go there. But so I double majored in Comm Des and drama, and yeah, that's sort of WashU. I got on campus and I was like, oh, okay, it's awesome, and I fell in love with it, and I loved how the drama program was small. I wanted a small drama program, and I ended up making like some of the best friends that I will have for the rest of my life here. So, yeah,
that's such a great. We all get hooked, in high school. The bug, we have a spelling bee. We're on the set for spelling bee, but you get hooked by and bitten by the bug, the theater bug, as I did. Woodshop was closed, and it's probably a good thing because the woodshop teacher was missing a finger, and so if that's any testament to how good of a teacher he is, I probably am better off. I still have 10 digits because I took tech theater and not woodshop. But so many of our stories, at least in this business, begin sort of as a hooked on drama student. But you said you also majored in Comm Des, which is highly typical, really, of WashU students, being multidisciplinary students and having multiple areas of interest. I would love to know a little bit about, and there are pictures, literally, there are posters in all of our hallways. And I just was walking around our hallways last night during the show and going, oh, there's Brenna. And there's Brenna. And I forgot she was in that show too. You were all over in drama. Did you have a lot of experience while here, not only departmentally in those productions, but also extracurricularly?
I mostly did PAD shows. I didn't really do any extracurriculars. I was a bad WashU student in that regard. When I was a freshman, I was Natalie and All Shook Up with cast and crew, which was cute, and I loved that. That was a fun experience. But as soon as I got into the PAD, I sort of stayed here. That became my curricular and extracurricular because I did every production that I could because I liked the experience. I liked the professional aspect of it. I knew that my goal was immediately to jump into professional theater. And when I tell people and their parents that, there's always this look of fear and wild panic in their eyes, and they go, ooh, what's your backup plan? And I say, oh, there isn't one. That's the thing is I decided there has never ever been anything else. There has never been anything else. This is it. And so I knew that the PAD was the way forward.
Did you find it challenging to balance, I often talk to students about their capacity and that they need to recognize where their limit is. Did you find that was a challenge here? I mean, being as high level of achievers as most students are, you are definitely included in that too. Did you find that particularly challenging being here at WashU with so many other pressures, curricular and extracurricular pressures?
Absolutely. The fun thing about Sam Fox is that your studios are 3 hours long. And so they take up a bunch of your day. And when you're double majoring in another school, you have requirements in both areas. And so I would often start my day at 7:30, end my school day at 6, go to rehearsal at 7, end rehearsal at 10 or 11, depending on if we were in tech. And there were some semesters where with the productions I was in, I was up to 23 credits. Of classes and shows. And at the same time, I'm living the life of a college student and also running my theater company back home year-round remotely. And so, yeah, it was a very stressful time, but also I am the type of person who likes to be busy and who likes to have things to do at all times. If I'm sitting still, I'm bored. And so it's, it is exactly what I signed up for, and it's what my nervous system expects at this point.
So your nervous system is accustomed to it now. Yeah, it's sort of like a drug of sorts that you're now used to. It's like caffeine. I have an iced coffee here somewhere. You mentioned your theater company that you're an artistic director for. That's Half Act Theater Company. And first of all, I find it amazing that you maintained some level of connection to that even while a student. So could you talk about the work that company does, the genesis of how it came to be and that type of thing?
So there's this historic theater building in my hometown, which is a very small rural area, and it's called the Showboat Theater, and it's almost 100 years old. And it's this gorgeous, it's red and gold, beautiful, beautiful building, and it's a community-run nonprofit. And when I was in high school, my best friend and I, Asa, were approached by the Showboat board, and they said, hey, we want to do something for the kids. We said, cool, we like kids, and so we wrote a little show, and it was a spoof of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory called Emporium. And we brought in 30 kids, and for a week, we taught them the show. We got them into costume. We taught them about acting. We taught them about theater, and then we performed. And I remember as soon as those auditions happened, this was our first time running auditions by ourselves. And these people entrusted their children ages 4 to 16. They entrusted their children to us. And, after auditions, Asa and I both went out and got into their car, and we just sat there for a minute, and then we both agreed, yeah, we're doing this. This is going to stay. Because it was so awesome to see those kids get on stage about ready to pee themselves and then start to have fun. And some of them couldn't even read. We were like, we asked them to do a cold read, and they're like, I can't read. And we were like, awesome, make your best, feral bunny sound. And then they did that. And it was great. It was great. And I was 17 when we started that. And from there, we learned so much in a short amount of time. Because it hasn't been that long since I was 17 is the weird thing. But it feels like eons. And we've developed our team. We've gotten very, very good at what we do. This year we have a cast of, I think, 30 or 31 kids coming back. And we write our own productions, except for a few that we bring in. We bring in some smaller scale plays and musicals. But for our youth camps, we write all of our own productions. Last year we actually brought in Andre Hart, who was a alum as well from WashU, and he composed a musical for us, and it was amazing. We had a blast. Yeah, what was the question?
That was, you answered it. You answered it. I mean, what I find, Andre Hart, by the way, was a TA for me in designing creativity. This class I teach on creativity here for, I want to say, at least 3 years, and he is just immensely talented like yourself. And boy, you're pulling in ringers when you're pulling in Andre Hart. So it sounds like you were inspired. Tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, but you were inspired by those young people and their desire to be on stage and to express themselves in a different way than through writing or something that's a little more dry. Can you talk a little bit about at least in the creativity class, we talk quite a bit about the creative courage that kids have and that we all had when we were kids. Can you talk a little bit about that, about maybe how that pushed you to want to do, as you said to your friend Asa, we're doing this, we're going to keep doing this?
Yeah, kids are the best actors, and a lot of people disagree with me on that. But I think that kids are the best actors because usually they are totally unclouded. They get on stage and I say, act like a duck, and then they give the best, most Oscar-worthy performance of this uncoordinated duck, and it's beautiful. And they either have such confidence or they are so nervous. And when they're nervous, it's also beautiful because you see them, and with kids, victories are always way bigger than they are with adults. And you see them being nervous, and they get on stage, and you start to talk to them. And a lot of being a teacher is finding language to communicate. It's not, you have to know the material, but you also have to know how to communicate the material to hundreds of different people who have different needs. And so you have to find the right words and the right way to reach them emotionally. And once you do that, you see those nerves take a step back, and this child finds a breakthrough. And it's just the most like celebratable thing, because the victory is huge. And you can see, like, there's this moment in every show, and I talk about it with my staff at our staff training before every camp. And I say, there is going to be a moment where you are going to watch a child, and they will either be on stage or they will be playing a game out back, or like we'll be doing some activity, and you'll watch their eyes and they will light up. And from then on, that child will be different. And that child will have a better understanding, and they will have made a huge discovery, and you help facilitate that discovery. And that is a victory, and you should be proud of that, and you should relish in that victory. So, what was the question?
You got it. You keep asking me did I answer the question? You did. And in a wonderfully just poignant, insightful way. I can't help but think, and we are skipping a bit ahead in my little sort of chronological brain, to Spelling Bee. Because in Spelling Bee, you're not directing kids, you're directing adult students to be kids. And I'm thinking specifically of Leaf Honey Bear. I almost called him Leaf Honey Bear. So Leaf is, at one point in the show, he thinks he's not smart, but then realizes, and there's this little ding in his head, that he might be smart. So can you talk a little bit about how your background informs directing specifically this play, directing adults to be kids and to tap into their inner child?
The acting as children, it's a hard thing to do, like I said, because adults are now clouded. They don't have this unbridled creative confidence that kids have. And so adults overcomplicate a lot, especially WashU actors. WashU actors are some of the coldest actors I've ever met, and I know because I was one. They think a lot, and they're stuck in their heads, and they aren't in their bodies a lot of times, which is something that we work on, and we did work on in this production, is, stop thinking, feel with your body and with your heart. And absolutely my work at Half Act informed the way that I directed and the way that I took on this show. A lot of people look at Spelling Bee and they see a musical that's 80% of people coming up to the mic, spelling a word, and sitting down. And they say, that show's a nothing burger. It's cute and there's some really funny jokes in there, but emotionally it's not that deep. It's just kids at a spelling bee. And I disagree so vehemently because... And the direction that I took this production is that the way that we treat children matters immensely, because they are our future. They are what's going to be next. And we have a responsibility to them to leave them something beautiful and something that they can thrive in. And so you look at all of these kids in Spelling Bee and you see the deficits in their lives. You see what they need and the connections that they crave. And it's true for kids in real life, too. You look at them and you can see what drives them. And sometimes they'll just straight up tell you. They'll tell you what they need. And that is so awesome and such a beautiful thing. And I look at adults, too, in the world. And I talk to them and I see the child that they were and the things that they needed and didn't get when they were children. And I think that it's so important. And that's why I think this show is monumental, because it reminds us that the things we say and do to kids have power, and that children are just as deserving of agency and creative voice as adults, and that should be explored with them as well.
Once again, brilliant answer. Where did you go to school? Where did you go to school? I'm just so impressed by you, I have to say, Brenna. We did skip ahead to Spelling Bee, and you have some. I completely agree with you. I walked away. Again, I might have had some of the preconceptions that people have about this musical. Oh, it's for kids. It's us talking about being kids. But there's a self-discovery that every character and ourselves have in the course of the show, and this beautiful production you've put together with, let's face it, a lot of friends who are your age, which is also, for the old guy in the room like me, just invigorating to see, and so prideful. Is that a word? I don't know if that's a word. I didn't go to WashU. I don't know if you can tell. But anyway, I'm just so impressed by that. I want to get back to a little bit of a chronological aspect here. So you were very involved in PAD while you were here. Like I said, your picture is in a million places in our department at the moment. When you graduated WashU, obviously you kept up this work with Half Act. How, when you graduated, what was next for you? I want to make hope visible for prospective students, for current students, and that chasm beyond graduation is obviously, the uncertainty is daunting. How did you cross that path?
Luckily, I had avenues already. I had, my work at Half Act, which has opened a lot of doors. But as soon as I graduated, I started working with a local theater professional named Christina Rios. And we started an initiative called the Riverside Theater Project, which is it's a combined effort between the professionals at Half Act and the professionals at her company that she helped found, RS Theatrics. And basically, it's a cross-community collaboration that's designed to bring urban and rural artists together in a time of tumultuous political, economic, social, issues. And so we started that, and we produce professional theater in Herman at the historic Showboat Theater. And we use casts of professional artists from St. Louis and amateur or aspiring artists from Herman. And we bring them together. We rehearse in two cities, and then over tech, the St. Louis artists come and they actually live in Herman with us for a while. We host them. And then we produce these productions. And that has been so cool. I'm learning so much. I'm actually executive director of that, which is a lot of paperwork. But, I do it for Half Act anyway, so it's fine. But it's been a whole new ball game because I'm working with people of all ages in that endeavor. So that's what I've been doing. I also teach. I taught a little bit in Cincinnati for a while running Riverside and Half Act from there. And then I actually just got a job at the St. Louis Priory School. Thank you, Rob Morgan and Bill Whitaker, for recommending me for that. But I'm teaching 7th through 12th grade theater there, and next year we'll be adding 6th grade as well. So that's sort of, after graduation, I never had that panic of, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm going to die. You just keep doing what you're doing. And as the wise Anna Maria Pileggi once told me, follow your interest. I think, to me, there's nothing worth doing unless you're interested in it. And I recognize that, I come from a place of privilege, and I am privileged to be able to say that. But I truly, truly, truly want to encourage people to follow their interest in their creative and career lives. I think it's so important, and I think that if you do that, you will be a happier person, and happier people make a happier society.
That is so profound. I appreciate that. I often, there's very few, should I say, I'm going to back up. There's little room in my brain for statistics. As I like to tell people, I draw pictures. I don't hold statistics in my brain. But one of them, I think, is important that I tell certainly the 80 creativity students that I have, and that is that only 7% of the world's population has the opportunity, just the opportunity to go to college. And so I try to impress upon them that that's a responsibility, and one that you've taken obviously very seriously, connecting rural communities, exposing them to the arts, where in your own bio you recognize that there were not a lot, as they often are, not a lot of opportunities for people, and specifically kids in rural communities, to just experience art with cuts and arts and that type of thing. And that's sadly sort of par for the course these days. So you mentioned teaching. Can you talk a little bit about what teaching has meant for you, and if it's exposed you or given you some epiphanies along the way about kind of feeding your craft, feeding your art form?
I like to view it in a very simple way. All you have to do to get a child to succeed is make them feel safe and make them feel validated in their creative voice. That has gotten me everywhere. Even with these high school boys that I'm teaching, and some days I get out of my classroom and I am just holding my head because one of them said something that was just so, I don't even know what the word is, disappointing. But, I like to tell this story. And this is from one of my half-act boys, actually, a few years ago. And he was new. And this is a kid that has, some insecurities, and as most kids do, and most adults as well. But he came to camp and he was in defense mode all the time. And, we were watching him and we were like, what does this kid need? Because he was, brash with others and wasn't wanting to listen to staff and was just generally dysregulated at camp. And I, at that point, had another staff member who was directing. And I talked to her. I was like, Campbell, we need to figure out what to do here, because he's not having a good time and he's not learning the way that he should be. And so we developed a strategy and we watched his interactions with others. And one day we pulled him aside and we said, hey man, how's your experience at camp been? And he one-word answers, fine. We were like, okay, we just want to let you know that we have your back and we're here to make sure that you have an awesome time. And we want you to have fun. And so if there's anything that's bothering you or that you are struggling with, you can talk to us about it and we will help you navigate it. And he, responded again with a one-word answer. And we were like, well, shoot, back to the drawing board. But the next day he came in, completely different kid, completely different. He was smiling. He was having fun. And now this child, we actually pair him with some of our younger students as a mentor, because he goes out of his way, without us asking him, he goes out of his way to find the little kids that are struggling to connect with the group. And he will sit by them. He will play games with them and he will talk to them because I think he knows what that feels like. And that's not something we ask him to do. But now that he's done it, we'll be like, okay, hey, can you go sit with, Steve or whoever comes to camp? We don't have any kids named Steve. But so I tell that story because he at camp at first didn't feel safe and didn't feel like he could explore his creative voice. And then once he realized that that was something that he could do safely with our staff and with his peers at camp, that's also huge, is they have to feel safe with their peers. He turned into just the sweetest and most, he's so funny. He ended up getting the lead in the next production because he's so funny and so good at what he does. So yeah, that is that's how I'll answer that one.
Again, no surprise. This is a brilliant answer. I mean, how you're changing the world, and I mean this. This is not hyperbole. You're changing the world one young person at a time, and I find that just so admirable. I'm kind of speechless, to be honest, which is bad for a podcast, I'm told. But let's get back, if you don't mind, to this exact moment. We are, for those that tuned in late. Can you do that on a podcast? I don't think so. But, we're on the set for Spelling Bee. We are literally at the judges table, and I don't want to give away the tricks related to the judges table for those that haven't seen the show yet. It opened last night, standing ovation. I'm not surprised at all. Can you talk a little bit about the process of getting to this point? It's obviously been a long time coming. Lots of rehearsals in this very room with music director Larry Pry, your good friend and choreographer Joe Palisak. Talk a little bit about that process, about collaborating with your peers and, getting auditions off the ground and finding the right perfect mix of cast members in the show.
Like all good WashU students, I like to turn things into a paper whenever possible. So I started a year ago with my director's book, and I went through the text so many damn times, and I wrote down everything, and I compiled it. I compiled my vision, and I shared it with my designers, and I said, this is what I want. And they navigated that beautifully. But then we hit auditions, and with Spelling Bee and with a lot of things, what we were looking for was someone who gets it. They don't have to necessarily be the most talented person in the room, which all of our actors are very talented. If you're watching this, actors, you're very talented. But that wasn't the first thing I was worried about. The first thing I was worried about was someone who can track moment to moment and someone who understands the journey that they're going to go on and is open to that journey. And that is how we ended up with the cast that we did, with a lot of people who are not from the PAD. I think we only have 2 or 3 that are like PAD regulars, which is super awesome. We ended up with some freshmen too, which I love. And then after auditions, we jumped into rehearsals, and we worked in a way that probably would make a lot of directors very, very nervous, because we did everything chronologically. We didn't do like choreo boot camp. We didn't get that out of the way. We worked chronologically. So we would block until we hit a choreography number. Joe would teach the choreography. And then we did that. We spent time cleaning, working and running, and just taking those initial choices and deepening them and finding what doesn't work. Typical director things. It's all part of the process. And then, we get to tech. We add in all of the technical elements, and my designers were brilliant. I cannot be more grateful for the work that they have done to support the journey that the actors have developed. And now here we are after opening night, and I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled by how it's gone.
That's great. And the design, I'm very proud of your set designer, because she's one of my favorite designers. Just got accepted to Columbia Columbia Architecture School. We'll edit out the law school part later. Or maybe we won't. We'll just scare her parents. So Columbia Architecture School, Tina Zhang, this arrangement, this design, I think really is, I guess to use kind of a catchphrase, immersive. The audience is in the middle of the space. It's a tennis court style seating, we call it. So it's a long kind of basketball court kind of arrangement. And can you talk a little bit about how this particular arrangement kind of bubbled to the top? We haven't done, I will say, with my longevity in this department, we haven't done an arrangement like this in at least about 13 years, from what I could tell. Radio Free Emerson was a piece that Panel Camp directed, was the last show I can recall that we did in this arrangement. Can you talk a little bit about how the space informs the story or helps with the story in that way?
Don't get me wrong, Rob. This arrangement is a pain in the ass. I knew as soon as we decided on it, I was like, oh my God, wow. I just made so much work for myself and everyone involved. But it's fun, and I think that it's necessary. And I think it's necessary because it takes place in a gym. And so we put it in a gym. I kind of hate when spelling bee is staged in proscenium style, because the audience is supposed to be part of it. The audience is there. It's supposed to be a gym. And so we made a gym. And it's a very tightly packed gym. And that's awesome, because you have no choice but to look at all of the characters at all times and see what's happening on their faces. And you watch your peers come forward and be part of the magic as they're, trying and failing to spell. So yeah, I think that the space absolutely is perfect for the story. And I couldn't, whenever I stage this again in the future, I'll probably keep the tennis court style. And actually our photographer, Danny Reese, he came in and he goes, this is not a tennis court, this is a bowling alley. Which he's right. He's right. And there's even a formation in the show where the actors all stand in a little triangle like bowling pins. So it's pretty funny.
It didn't even occur to me. I've seen them, of course, in that position multiple times during tech, and it didn't occur to me that they were in a bowling pin position. That's brilliant. You're right. It is more bowling alley than tennis court, for sure. I would love to have you talk a little bit about costumes, also student design costumes by Heather Anderson, and how they, before a character even says a word, how they inform the audience as to their backstory and their character.
I'm going to first have a disclaimer here is that I'm not a designer. Design is something that I never did, but I can sort of speak to what Heather and I talked about, even though she is the authority in this. But anytime that you're looking at costume design, you're looking at character first. What does the script say they need? Do they need a belt? All the nuts and bolts. But then you look at who they are and what they would wear. For example, for Leaf and Barfy, we talked about, does this person potentially have sensory needs? Would they be in a scratchy sweater, or would they not? Or Olive, is she wearing hand-me-down clothes? Does she have clothes of her own, or are these her older cousins that just sort of ended up in a trash bag on her porch? Stuff like that, looking at who they are. Heather made some beautiful, beautiful choices, like Rona and Panch. Rona's wearing a red suit, and Panch has a red pocket square. But Panch, his pocket square is just a little too bright and it doesn't quite match her. And I think that is wonderful for their arc and their characters. And also Olive and Barfi. And I didn't see this until Final Dress when they were doing the pas de deux together. And they're dancing and they're waltzing and spinning around the stage. And I'm like, oh my God, Heather, their sweaters match. And they don't. They don't match because Barfi's in this like puke green sweater with like stripes and patterns. And Olive is in this dark purple sweater with stripes and patterns. But the patterns, when they're swirling together and they're moving around the stage, they look like they belong together. And that is such a beautiful thing. I was so stoked to see that. I was like, damn, Heather. Wow. It was so awesome. Yeah, so costumes come from a place of character, not just logistically, but also emotionally, and what clothes are going to support and visually communicate to the audience and reaffirm those choices that are being made by the actor.
I just love that. And I love, I want to give a shout out to other designers as well. Zach Cohn lit this show just beautifully. And speaking of our kind of dancing around this idea of mentoring and students, and your story about your student who then became a mentor for younger versions of himself. Zach during tech takes one of my 212 students, Esteban, kind of under his wing and shows him how to run the board. And then I'm sure Esteban will kind of pay that forward later as a lighting designer. Tab Burt does a great job as an audio engineer on this show. He also works in the Edison Theater as a technical director there. And then I don't want to leave out Larry Pry and the music director, and the band is in the shop. There's just not enough room in the Hotchner Studio Theater for us to also have 114 seats and a band. So the band is playing live in our scene shop, which is one floor down and one door away from the space. I don't know if you want to talk about any of those other design elements, but I would love to hear your take.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier with this team. Larry and Joe, our choreographer, and I in the room, we were flying, man. We were having the best time. We worked so well together. Larry's like the guy when it comes to spelling bee. He's done it so many times, but that does not take away from every time it's like he makes new discoveries and he plays so well with the choices that we are making. He's just wonderful. And Joe, we worked on this for a long time because we've been living together. So she's a dear friend of mine and has been for a long time. And so I was overjoyed to get to work on this with her. But I asked for a lot of her, and she delivered. We were actually so surprised last night at opening night because so many people came up to her and said, wow, I've never seen Spelling Bee with so much dancing. And that we were both like, what do you mean? What do they do the whole time? What are they just sitting there? Because I think this show begs for dance. I think it begs for dance. Musicals are non-realism. And the sooner people take that and run with it, the more fun we will all have. Because you can't, it's just, if you don't dance, it's just spelling. It's just walking and spelling. And so she created this beautiful world and really, really, really deepened the choices we were making through their movements. I couldn't be happier with her. And then I have to say something about our stage management team. AJ Harness and Margaret Fecco. AJ is our SM and Margaret's our ASM. They were so good. I have worked with bad stage managers in my life, and I've worked with really good stage managers in my life. And so when I came in, I knew that these were student stage managers. They might not know all the tips and tricks, and I was okay with that. I was ready for that. But these two were so on it. AJ knew exactly what he needed to do, and if he didn't know something, he asked. And they were just both, they kept the vibe of the room so positive, and they were so respectful of our actors. And I was thrilled by my design team, and I think we all worked very well together to support the production and its journey.
There's that word vibe again, except it doesn't sound cringy when you say it. When an old guy like me says it. I'm just so proud of you and this production, and I want to come back around to you and how impressed I've been as an audience member, let's call it, honestly, to be a teacher here, an instructor here, to see your students and former students do so well and really knock it out of the park when it comes to this musical. And you are the leader in the room, and you own it. And so you both have I've seen your energy. You have a leadership quality, but also an empathetic, understanding quality, and you just blend that beautifully, as if you were your own orchestra, quite honestly. I got to say, I've been designing for a long time. Every gray hair I have is a show, at the very least. And I've never seen a director walk into a room at the end of a show, typically end of a preview, end of a dress rehearsal. We have notes and we talk about the technical elements. The actors at that point have typically already gone home. And you were giving us notes, and I actually interrupted you because you were giving notes from memory. You had no notepad in front of you, and you were like, yeah, Tab, I've got this note for you, and then what about that light cue? And then I was like, hold on a second, Brenna, are you doing this from memory? What the hell? Like, I was just floored. I think I said that's insane, because I've never seen that before. But I just want to say that, I mean, to me, that's with you, not surprising. I just am so damn proud of you and your team and this show. And honestly, I wish we could run it for a month. By the time people hear this podcast, it's already been done, and it will be a memory at that point, but a really wonderfully fond and profound memory for this department. Hopefully in your career, we'll have you back to do another one, because you've just done so brilliantly in this one. So thank you, Brenna, for doing this show for us, but also being on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. And I want to say about the notes thing, I didn't want my notebook in the production photos. So that was the reason for that. Thank you so much for having me, Rob. This has been so fun. And I have loved being back, and I hope to be back in the future. I love it here. I love being in the PAD and in the department. That has helped me grow and thrive. So
my special thanks to Brenna Jones for joining the PAD podcast. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you have any interest in being on the PAD podcast, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to have you as a guest. Until then, have a great day.